House Bill 320 by Representative Owen, Title 17, Required Instruction for Students, Required Training for Teachers, Other School Employees, or repeal certain specific requirements to authorize the Board of Elementary Secondary Education to promulgate rules.
Rep. Owen on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, 2.5 weeks ago, Governor Landry stood here and he said one of the things that he wants to try to do in his tenure is to let teachers teach. He spoke of the burdens and the constraints and restraints that are on our teachers, and he spoke about his desire to try to free their time up to let them do what they went in the classrooms to do. House Bill 320 is the beginning of that in my mind in the context of what I think I can help us accomplish. I want to read to you very quickly from a letter from a teacher back home named Amanda Beeler. She said, "My name is Amanda Beeler, and until 2 years ago, I was a kindergarten teacher at East Leesville Elementary. I have since left the profession. I quickly fell in love with teaching in 2002 when I began my career as an educator in the kindergarten classroom. When I chose my career, I understood that pay was low and that hours were long, but it was my calling and my passion. I was rated highly effective, selected Teacher of the Year, and on the executive board of a local professional organization. I came from a family of educators, and teaching was my life. But like so many others, my passion for teaching was diminished by the ever-growing demands that were placed on me as a classroom teacher. The demands were so great that I walked away from the profession that I loved just 3 years shy of retirement. Today, I would like for us, please, to take a look at what we are really doing to our teachers." And I'm going to read a little bit more of this later, but I will tell y'all, in the local community where I live in Leesville, teachers like Amanda Beeler is like Barry Sanders walking away from the Detroit Lions in mid-career. It sent a shockwave across the parish and across the town when a Teacher of the Year was walking away because of the constraints that are put on them and the demands that are put on them inside of their profession. House Bill 320 identifies a number of requirements that are levied on teachers to pass along in classrooms, non-academic requirements, and I think they're all important things. I think they're all important, and every last one of them is well-intentioned and well-meaning, and it also identifies a number of training requirements that teachers have to do. House Bill 320 repeals about 17 or 18 of these things, and we shift them to Bessie. It directs our state school board, our Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, to review all of these, to determine the time and the currency required of these, and to determine if they are still germane for our classrooms, and determine if this is best for our teachers, and ultimately what's best for our students, because really that's what this is about. I think some years ago, Whitney Houston sang a song that started, the first line was, "I believe that children are our future." And we all know that. We all know that deep down in our souls. But we as legislators have a great deal of authority here. And oftentimes things happen in our worlds, in our communities, where we feel like I am going to do something and I am going to fix one thing. And what I think is over time, a lot of these one things have loaded up and loaded down our classroom teachers. And I want professional educators, I want Bessie to use DOE to determine how much of these need to stay and how many need to go. And that's what I'm asking in House Bill 320, to try to send relief for our teachers like Amanda Beeler, who walked away in the middle of a promising career, probably the best teacher in town, to provide relief for these folks, to send a signal that our teachers matter and ultimately our students matter. Right now, Louisiana is short 1,200 teachers across the state. And this, I believe, will help with that, and most of all, it will send an important message to our educators that they matter, and we want them to stay in the classroom and to continue to educate our students. Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment I would like to offer up very quickly.
Madam Clerk, on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker and members, Representative Charles Owen offers up set number 1955 on your computers.
Rep. Owen on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment simply makes this bill effective on the signature of the governor. So it can trigger the actions of Bessie as quickly as possible and get them down the road to getting this done as quickly as possible. And before I open up for questions, let me say one more time. Every one of these things that I read in here, that I've identified as things that I think Bessie needs to look at were done with great intention. Some of them were done in the wake of tragedies. Some of them were done in the wake of generational tragedies. Some are in place to try to head off problems. But we have spaghetti coded what goes on in our classrooms, and our teachers are begging for help. Amanda says, our teachers today are demoralized, exhausted, and are begging for something to give. I'll take any of your questions, members.
Are there any questions on the amendment? Any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing no objections, the amendment is adopted. Back on the bill, Representative Bagley for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Representative Owens, on adding cursive writing back.
Yes, sir.
Those of you that didn't have cursive writing as a youngster, the younger people can't read it. My grandson can't read it. I will say this, and the problems in schools are not as much with his list as it is with the implementation of how the schools are run. Okay. The biggest issue is discipline, and I'm a 43-year teacher, and I didn't have any trouble. I didn't have much trouble with discipline because I was a coach, and I didn't put up with it. But most new teachers, when they come, they can't hold a class together. And when they send the kids, when they'd send for me to come get them when I was assistant principal, and I'd take them out, they'd send them back before I could even get back to the room to it. So the teacher in there was demoralized, and that led to many teachers quitting. It still does. The other issue is, and this doesn't have anything to do with curriculum, the other issue is that the class team, and we brought bills in here that I fought, the classroom time is 55 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour and 20. They've got to get everything they got in 55 minutes. If cursive writing doesn't end up on that test at the end, they're not going to teach it. They're only going to teach the things that they can do inside 55 minutes. And when you add things or take it away, it really won't matter as long as we've got those tests, and that's what predicates what we do in those classes. Again, the Bessie board's involved in all that, I understand. I'm not sure that we think about those things where teachers are involved, because I'm sure all of them, I know Representative Mellerin is here. He was not a teacher. So, I mean, I'm not sure how you know if you've never been in that position. I know Superintendent Brumley was a school teacher. In fact, I worked for him. So he understands that. When he and I talk, he knows that. And so I'm not opposed to what you're doing. I think you're doing the right thing. I would like to see us maybe there's some other things that we're aiming the arrow at the wrong target. And again, I know I read these deals, and I taught most of those things in health and PE, so I understand. But again, I had 55 minutes to do it, and there were certain things I did, and we did all that, and then they were tested. Some of those things were tested on. So I do agree. I will support your bill. Again, I just think there were some other things that we're still not looking at the right way. We had a special session on crime. The things that are going on in our cities are going on in our classes. And they're not stopping it because they let them do it, and it continues. And until we can get back control of those classrooms and be sure that we're not going to get anything done. They're not going to learn. They're not going to behave. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, I want to remind you we have a very lengthy agenda today. If you have statements to make in reference to the bill, if you want to speak in favor or against, please press your floor button. If you have questions seeking an answer about the bill, please press your question button. Representative Freiberg for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Owen, a couple of questions. Number one, if we pass this bill, will these regulations, will these requirements automatically be lifted, or will Bessie have to address each one of them?
They are automatically lifted, and Bessie is directed to look at the list and determine what is going to continue inside the classroom.
So everything would be lifted, and Bessie would determine which ones would remain?
Yes, ma'am.
The second question would be, even if Bessie does not continue to require a particular training, if a local district felt it was important, they could deliver that training or require that training in the district, could they, or could they not?
They absolutely could. Our principals back home are proactive people. They know what's going on. I have every confidence they would. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Rep. Owen. I think this is a good bill.
Thank you.
Representative Mandy Landry for a question on the bill.
Hey, Repo, and I mean, I agree. We talk every year about putting, too much on teachers, but what we're hearing over and over is they don't make enough money. I mean, don't you think that would be the primary reason that we have in being unable to keep teachers?
I would tell you that is a contributing factor. Like Representative Bagley offered up some contributing factors. I think it's certainly one. Yes, ma'am.
Do you support a raise for teachers?
I do.
Good answer, thank you.
Representative Phelps for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Owens, relative to Rep. Freiberg's question, do you believe that if the school districts wanted to do these things themselves, that there would not have been a state legislation for it?
I don't know that. I would expect a lot of them were handed to them like going, oh, okay, this is a good idea, or oh, we never thought of this. And if they're doing something now that is beneficial and they want to keep, they're certainly welcome to do that.
Okay, I appreciate your answer, but I would like to say just they were not doing those things. That's why they came to the legislature. Probably it should have come from Bessie. We did have that conversation last term. I'm sure you remember, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there were concerns that, from my office this week with a lot of it around, I don't know if you've ever heard of students' concerns that they had the academic training, but some lessons they did not learn about life situations in school. Have you ever heard that concern from graduating students?
Sure. I have heard that. But,
Okay.
But my response is the primary mission of the school is to teach academics.
Well, I mean, I think coaches do more than just coach sports. I think they give some life skills. So I beg to differ with you on that. That comes from the school. So I'm saying that to say the concerns that I had that in my office today, and let me just say for the record, if you would allow me, these extra trainings or teachings were not of a semester. They were not of an hour. They were made available whenever it fits within that subject area in which they were teaching, correct?
There is I would say, a myriad of different requirements dealing with hours per year or once a year or things like that. Yes, they're not consistent across the board, which is why I wanted Bessie ultimately to turn over Superintendent Brumley and the educational professors to determine probably what's the best path for that and what optimizes their finite time.
Right, and it was fitting within their subject area. Example, if you would agree, if it was as we discussed earlier today, obesity or binge eating or I've forgotten the term that I'm thinking about, that would be more fitting in a PE course. Would you agree? All the teachings that we're speaking of were fitting to the subject area in which they were related to. So I just wanted the body to know that this was not an extra course that we were having teachers teach. It was not for a semester. It was only for a short time. Would that be accurate?
Well, I think we pigeonholed them where we thought they needed to go.
Okay.
And I think from the outside, we were trying to look in and say, here's what we think you need to do.
Where it was
Well-intentioned, well-meaning, but putting our nose in a place that I'm sure you have the capacities to do it, and others might, but the teachers were trained and brought there to do those things, and so were the education professionals.
right, but I still wanted to make the body aware. With all of that being said, some of these subject areas were per the subject where they were fitting per school subject, so it wasn't.
Might have been.
Okay, we just wanted to be fair about that, and they were not extra teaching on a semester. It was not for a year. It was just whenever it was on the rubric where it was fitting for extra time. There was a concern about teen suicide and strong opposition for these trainings because that may have been a subject there. I wasn't privy to the entire list, but where would you see that coming from? Because that would not be a teacher that was teaching about teen suicide. That came from an area that was probably most fitting. So if the districts were already doing that, do you think they would take that on, as Rep. Freiberg said, that Bessie may not even address any of these continued subjects that would be beneficial to our students?
I trust Superintendent Brumley and his staff implicitly to make the good, wide, macro level decisions for our state.
Okay, and last question, how would we know that
Senator
they
Hinskins,
choose
Senator
to take up
Hinskins.
any of these
Senator
topics?
Senator Hinskins. Can you, thank you, I'm sorry.
How would we know at the end of this, the passing of this bill, because we know it's going to pass, how would we know that any of these things were implemented by Bessie?
Bessie will have to implement rules, and we will be able to see those rules.
As the author of this bill, would you be willing to do that and bring it back to the body if this is what they decided to do at the next year?
There's nothing that I won't put on the table that is reasonable and is for the well-being of our state. I will certainly talk about anything in the future.
So my question was, when this passes, next year, maybe you can get the information of these topics that Bessie chose to continue.
Well, I don't want to second guess what we give them. I want them to have a chance to execute this. I want them as educators to execute this plan. But we can certainly talk about it and review it on the backside as rules reviews.
I don't know if I understand you, Representative Owen.
Rep. Thomas, why do your
Did you
eyes?
Mr. Speaker, could you please review with the body the 15-minute rule?
The member is not out of time, so we're taking, the 15-minute rule is the member presents a bill, questions and answers within 15 minutes. If the member runs out of time, I will ask for additional time. So the member presented a bill, then the member went into an amendment, which started the time over again. So I'm just going to explain, we had about 3 minutes left whenever you stood up, so I'm going to have to grant an additional minute now, but that's the 15-minute rule. Thank
That's
you.
fine. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Owens, I was only asking, we're not trying to tell them what to choose. I was only asking, when this passes at the end of this term, at the end of this session, would you be willing next year to bring back the topics that Bessie chose to continue?
I want Bessie to make these decisions, and I think we, as the legislature, have the right to review all of their rules. And anything within bounds of the rules is on the table. But I want them to do this.
Not the rules, the subjects that of teen suicide that they chose to continue. Are you understanding my question,
Yes, ma'am.
Not the
I thought I
rules.
gave you an answer.
sir?
I apologize. Yes, when this will go to Bessie, Bessie will determine what stays in and what does not stay in frequency. And
Okay,
then
will
from
you
there,
be
we will
willing-
let them execute.
Will you be willing to tell us what they leave in next
Of course,
next session?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Marcel for a question. Representative Marcel?
Thank you. Representative Owens, I believe you touched on some of my concerns with Representative Phelps. As I appreciate it, if your bill passes, then the trainings that are going to both the students and the teachers will be determined by Bessie.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the present law, the dating violence and eating disorders and all of the things that are listed, and one of the ones that really concern me is the bullying. Those things are going to be decided by Bessie, and is that going to be some kind of advisory committee, or how are they going to determine which of these matters that they keep or don't keep?
I think at the behest of this law, they will look at what's been what has been removed, and then they will go and look at each one and determine the I would say the germaneness and the frequency of what is kept.
Okay, so are we trying to save the teachers more time to be in the classrooms versus training? Is that it? Or do they have training days? How are these things implemented currently?
Well, it is district by district. Some of it's probably done before school, before the year starts. It's done as they go along. It's a requirement through the year. And so, with 65 or 69 different districts, everything's different.
Okay, so who asked you to bring this bill? Was this something you came up with on your own, or you just felt like the teachers needed more time to teach?
This was my initiative. I started this last year. We got a little ways through committee, and I realized that there was not the time in the session to get through it. I've been thinking about this for some time. I mean, for several years before I was elected, I had been worried about the weight on our teachers' backs.
Okay, so that's fair. But there was an amendment put on to include cursive writing. Is that accurate?
When I went through, now I will say exactly what I said in committee. My dad always told me to admit when I made mistakes. And when I was going through with the initial bill, I put cursive writing in the list as things that needed to be pulled out. And then it occurred to me between then and the time we got to the committee, it's like, no, that's an academic thing. And I talked to a couple of teachers about it, and they went, yeah, that's an academic thing. It's good for brain development. That's why I put that back in.
Well, I think
My
it's,
mistake that I
The
corrected.
member's out of time. Is an objection to granting an additional 5 minutes? Seeing no objection, we're going to grant an additional 5 minutes.
okay. I'm glad you did put it back in. Are you aware there are a lot of students that are in high school now in 9th, 10th grade that can't write in cursive because they...
I am well aware of that, and it saddens me.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Ventrella for the floor. Rep. Ventrella for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, thank you. I'm up here before you today to mention a little girl heavy on my heart today. Her name is Allie. There is a provision in Representative Owen's bill that addresses a bill that some of you may be familiar with, Allie's Law. Everybody that was here last year actually voted unanimously in favor of it, and in the other chamber it was voted unanimously in favor of. The grandmother of little Allie is our immediate past president of the Republican Women of Central, and she is very dear to me. She has been an educator for 45 years, and she worked very hard, tirelessly, on Allie's Law. And what this bill does, very briefly, is it instructs schools to teach about organ donation. Allie was unfortunately killed in a car accident, and she was an organ donor, and she did not have education on that subject, but she voluntarily chose to be one. So it expresses to the students the importance of being an organ donor, and this training is provided free of charge by LOPA, a wonderful organization in this state. It is my understanding of Representative Owen's bill that it is not the intent to jettison any of the training that is not onerous or impractical. So it is my understanding that I have been given assurances that Allie's Law will be considered by Bessie, that this is in conjunction with what our intent is here to do. So I am not here speaking in opposition to this bill, but I just wanted to go on the record for all the members here listening and everybody back home that if Allie's Law is not considered by Bessie, you'll see me up here next year drafting a bill to reinstate Allie's Law. So I urge Representative Owens to keep that on the back of my mind. And again, condolences to the family, and I appreciate all of your time here today. So thank you.
Representative Schlegel for the floor on the bill.
So members, this bill was a really hard bill for me, but it was also very easy. So it was hard for me because one of my laws is getting repealed, taking out a statute, but ultimately Bessie's going to look to all the things that we put into statute. I passed the Safe Students Act, which trains children on suicide prevention and violence prevention. Y'all know that my heart is just all about children. I think I pass a bill every session regarding helping children and protecting them. And so, but I'm also in support of this bill because I also know that what we have done cumulatively, because all these things are very worthy, but we have just overloaded our teachers, and now they've been overburdened with all of these things. And the testimony in the hearing was that when they asked teachers how their lives could be easier, the number one thing was around this, unburdening them of all the things that we have sort of put on them. And so I'm entrusting that Bessie, which is another elected body, who's very close to the education system, we have tasked them to look at all of these things and prioritize these things. I know I'm going to officially be lobbying Bessie to make sure that students are trained on suicide prevention, because I know that our children are in a mental health crisis, but I also know we're also in a crisis of teacher shortages. So that's why I'm in support of this bill, but I'm also in support of Bessie looking at these policies and adopting these to save our children. But if we don't have teachers in the classroom, we're not helping our children. So I rise in support. Thank you.
Representative Hughes for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the questions have been very worthy. The discussion has been well spent. I think we really need to understand the context of this bill at this moment in time. As the chair alluded to, we have a shortage of teachers. It's actually a crisis. To say it's a shortage would be putting it mildly. Unfortunately, our teachers, they wake up early. They don't get paid a lot of money. They show up to school. They might have to do morning duty, bus duty. They might have to do lunch duty and might not get a lunch break. They teach all day. And then we have all types of requirements that are in statute that they have to be trained on. And so when the school bell rings at 3:15, oftentimes our teachers cannot leave because they have to stay an additional 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours to do training. Guess how much they're getting compensated for that training? Zero. It's not saying that these trainings are not worthy, but it's taking a mental and emotional toll on our educators. Some educators are so passionate about the profession that they're saying, you know what? I can deal with the low pay, even though I don't like it, but all of these burdens, extra requirements are just a lot. Then we have things that we've embedded that have to take place during the instructional school day. So at a time when 67% of our third graders can't read, at a time when our students are struggling with math, we're taking away instructional time to do other things, not saying that these things are not worthy. All this bill says is we're going to give Bessie the opportunity to look at all of this, and to add another layer, Superintendent Brumley has convened a task force of educators and school leaders to give their input. And so Bessie is the appropriate place to say, you know what, how do we create balance and ensure the trainings that are important and necessary? We do those, and maybe some of the things that are outdated and antiquated, we can take those off the books. And so, members, I think this is a very common sense bill. I really commend Representative Owen at this moment in time when we really need our hardworking educators in the classroom, and we need to try to make their job as stress-free as possible. This is a really, really important bill, and so I'm proud to rise in support, and I thank him for his efforts and for him to continuing to work with good faith with everyone to make this bill better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Amadei for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I'll be brief because our esteemed colleagues who spoke before me said many of the points I was going to bring up, but I wanted to call your attention to the top of the bill where you'll see that it came out of committee with 9 co-authors. It's no one's intent here to say that any of these topics or subjects or concepts are useless or not good. Many of them are very necessary. I think that the effort of this bill is, number one, to try to relieve some of the burden of excess off of our teachers who want to continue to teach and who also want to have like a life in evenings and weekends. And I commend Rep. Owen for doing something. This one bill is not going to solve all of our school problems, but he decided to look into this. He did the research, and he did something. And I respect that, and I think that this bill is a good idea. It puts the authority back where the authority should be for these topics, and that is with Bessie. We can always, as others have said, we can always come back in another session and as a legislature put something back into statute if we feel very strongly and Bessie has a different idea. But for now, I like the idea of putting this back with Bessie and letting them take care of it in the authority that they already have. And let's see what they come up with. So I stand in support of the bill and I ask for your favorable passage.
Representative Lacombe for the floor on the bill. Representative Lacombe.
Members, I rise now to discuss something very similar to what Representative Ventrella had said. I see in the bill, and I spoke to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Owen here, this does apparently take out an issue with sudden cardiac arrest training and first aid training for teachers, which just last year, the year before last, we were able to pass a bill that that dealt with that subject matter. And it's based mostly one of the children that spurred the law on, Miss Anna Grace Smith from my district. Her mother and father and are good friends of our family. And Miss Anna Grace was basically a young cheerleader at Catholic High School, Point Capee, and suffered a sudden cardiac event at the high school. And because of charitable donations made by the Lions Club, each school had a defibrillator available on hand. Anna Grace's grandmother is actually a teacher at Catholic of Point Capee and helped assist us during the event, during the episode, was able to help render life-saving CPR to Anna Grace while professional folks were en route to come use the defibrillator. So we passed this statute up here. Ms. Anna Grace came up and testified a couple years ago. She was a representative of the American Heart Association. She's a fantastic young lady. She's everything's fine from it. But I'm in the same spot. We've worked hard to basically get that portion in there so that all teachers and schools and administrators can help assist in an event such as that. So I'm not rising against Representative Owen's bill because I know his heart and I know what he's trying to do, and I actually support it very much because I think that a lot of the burdens that we place on and a lot of the things that Bessie asked us to do in this chamber should be dealt with constitutionally under Bessie's order. But I'm saying the same, as I guess this message is more not so to the rest of our colleagues, but if this bill is to make its way through the process and pass, I want this message to be known to Bessie that in the event that they render that or take that out, I also will be up here fighting to ensure that all of our teachers and representatives are trained in the schools to deal with sudden cardiac events, because it's not just people like Anna Grace. This happens routinely to athletes and other folks. There was another child from Denham Springs High School that had suffered sudden cardiac arrest during a school event as well at the same time. So these are important matters, but I do agree constitutionally that Bessie should be charged with these things. And I know that Representative Owen's not trying to eliminate that. He's trying to ease some burdens. So I'll be supporting the bill, but in the event that Bessie comes back down the pathway and says they're going to eliminate that sort of protocol, then I too will be back to deal with some of these issues along the sudden cardiac event. Thank you.
Representative Phelps for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to remind us today that I do understand Rep. Owen's position as well. But I wanted to go back to, I think, Representative Bagley's comment. At first, there are a lot of other things that we can be doing now to try to retain and incentivize our teachers. As for the reasons that I stated earlier, these are not just another class that we're asking them to teach. But I would like for us to continue to think about, we will be retaining teachers if we were giving them a raise. I have an example of a teacher in North Louisiana who was a veteran 12-year teacher on last year, or maybe the year before. But she resigned from teaching, Representative Owen, because she was denied her earned eligible sabbatical leave for school. So there are a lot of reasons why our teachers leave, and I want us to just keep in mind that I think one of the first things that we should be addressing, even before your bill, is a teacher raise.
Representative Owen, you have a right to close on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we oftentimes vote on very weighty things in here, and I want to thank you all for your attention. Thank you, Chair Slagle, for your kind words and your cooperativeness and your leadership in this. We have to make hard decisions at times, and I understand everyone has to make their own decision here. Thank you, Representative Ventrella and Representative Lacombe, for your words. I will bird dog this. I will bird dog this all the way through this process. I asked people in the House committee the other day that if anyone had any other things that they thought needed to be added, or if we need things tightened up as we go, we want to get this right, because our teachers need a lifeline. Okay, I want people like Amanda Beeler to come back to work. I want these good teachers to come back to work. I want them to come in August and go, man, that's different now. That's what we want. We want our teachers to come back to work. We want our kids to be well educated. Thank you for your time. I ask your favorable passage.
Representative Owen moves for final passage of the bill. As many of you in favor vote yea, those opposed vote nay. The clerk will open the machine. Members, vote your machine. Members, vote your machine. Desatel, yea. Boye, yea. Zarang, yea. Green, yea. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Are you through voting? Members, vote your machines. The clerk will close the machine. We have 94 yeas and 9 nays, and the bill finally passes. Representative Owen moves to adopt the title, moves to reconsider the vote, which the bill finally passed. Lay that motion on the table without objection, so ordered. Next bill.